Hello and welcome to my FlossTube video. I'm Jean Farish and I'm so glad that you're here with me today. We are going to talk about color today. I've been asked a lot of questions and had some comments about how to change color in a design and things like that, which is a pretty broad and complex subject. So today I'm going to use one example. This is a pillow that sits in my kitchen. We have this lovely window seat as part of our kitchen. And this is one of my favorite vintage designs called the Quilted Cat. This is, has kind of an interesting backstory. When I was in college and visiting some friends of mine in Baltimore, they had this wonderful big fluffy white cat who just owned the world. Those of you who have cats know exactly what kind of cat personality I'm talking about. So this is a sketch that I did of that cat in terms of just his shape and just his whole demeanor. And then years later, when I started my cross-stitch design company, I superimposed my love of quilting with that shape and came up with the Quilted Cat. So, you know, this was done back in the 80s when that sort of color scheme was all the rage. So what if I wanted to stitch it again and kind of update it? Where would I go with those colors? So I deliberately chose a project that doesn't have a multitude of colors just to talk about the concept and how I go about picking out colors. So the first thing I want to point out to you is you have a favorite color scheme. Whether you realize it or not, everybody does. And it's most likely going to be found in your kitchen, your living room, your dining room, or your closet. You have a favorite scarf. You have a favorite tie that you just really like for the man in your life to wear. You have a china pattern that you absolutely adore. All of these things have color schemes that were developed by a professional designer. So why not take their expertise and your taste and put them together and put them to use when you are trying to change the colors in any kind of a color scheme. So to kind of keep myself focused, I looked at and set aside all those things I'm just talking about, china patterns, scarves, whatnot, because I just had too many colors in them. These are all batiks, and what made them good for this sort of a project is that they primarily have just a couple of colors in them. So in going through them, I came to this one, and that just stopped me right there. I like this one. But just to show you some other possibilities, here's a pink and purple, a kind of rust and green. So we're going to focus on this very bright oranges and pinks, and we're going to pull out the colors from this. This also gives me a chance to show you how I organize my colors, which I have to tell you is different than I would organize my threads if I were not designing professionally. So keep that in mind. I really have two stocks of floss. One I design with and the other one that I stitch with. And so what I'm showing you today is the one that I dubbed my design floss. So I have one ring here and then larger rings that each have a family of colors. Now, again, this is the Cosmo brand, but I could have done this with DMC. And what I've done is I've added these little tags. I think they call them jeweler tags that you can find at any kind of an office supply store. And in it, like this says 1D. So this goes with my Cosmo color card. So in column 1, I labeled the color families A, B, C, D, and E. And so this tells me that if I'm looking at this and I say, oh, I think I want the colors from, you know, this family of pinks, then I know I want the 1D ring. So right now I'm going to set this aside because this really is not important for this particular exercise that we're going to do. But I just wanted to show you how I organize them in case you're wondering what these little tags are that are hanging on here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just lay these colors out until I find the family that I think works best with it. And I like that one. So I'm just for the ease of working here, I'm going to go ahead and take it off my project ring. Okay, so that's one possibility. And then for like the pinks and for the oranges, which is on a different ring because this goes in the 4th column in my color card. I kind of like this. So let me take that one off. But I'm not as positive about that. So I'm also going to take another one of the orange families and lay that one out. So let's figure out which one we like better between those two. Okay, when you, I forgot to start my camera. Forgot to start my close-up camera, that whole thing. Okay, so let's take a look at these now in the close-up. So this is the first one I laid out here, the pinks. And then I was kind of wondering about these oranges. And then I also grabbed these oranges. Okay. So this is what we're starting with to look at. So I can already just eliminate a whole bunch of these. Like these are gone. So now I'm left with these 4. And then of the 2 oranges, I know I can get rid of the very light ones there. Get rid of the very light ones here. And then it becomes a question of what other colors are you going to need. So for example, in the cat's eyes, there are 2 colors. There's also, in this case, a dark brown that's used for the whiskers and then is used for the back stitching. So, oh, and there's also a deeper color of the sort of rusts that's used for his nose. So I have a few more colors that I need to add. Now, the easy one for me is the cat's eyes. So let's take a look at what the possibilities are there. Pulled out this family of greens, which is an easy choice because the green is opposite on the color wheel from the red family. And so I want the cat's eyes to be the dominant feature. So I really want some contrast here. So looking at this family of very bright greens, the one that really jumps out to me is this one. Now the other colors that are going to be in this design, I can really wait and choose those after I get started stitching. I am here to tell you there's not a designer walking the face of the earth that has not changed colors once stitching has commenced. Looking at the bulk of color in a skein is very different than looking at a scattering of stitches. Sometimes you need to go brighter, sometimes you need to go deeper, sometimes the color is just wrong and you need to start all over again. So don't feel like you have to make a commitment to every color in the color scheme to start with. For this design, I would start by stitching the cat's face. And after I had stitched some of the quilt part of the face, then I would start working on the eyes and just see how the colors relate to each other. Okay, now I need to narrow down the colors a little bit more. I have 2 families of orange here, and I really only need 1. This one is brighter, will pair better with the reds than this one. So I'm going to set that one aside. Now I have to pick 2 colors within each of these to do the design. And they need to be different enough where this is not subtle shading. This is 2 colors that are working well together, but that the eye can clearly see that it is 2 colors. So for that reason, I would not pick, say, both of these. So I either need to go with the really deep orange and the more medium orange, but that still doesn't seem like a lot of difference to me. What would happen if I did that one and this one? And that's really reading very yellow on my camera screen here, but that truly is an orange. So I don't know. I think that actually might be good. So let's look at those 2. And then the pinks, I feel like this one is almost too red. So what if we did this one and this one? These are sort of a watermelon pink. Now, if that's not going to be enough contrast, let's see how this one would be. And again, that's reading as very shocking pink on when I'm looking at my camera screen, but it really doesn't look quite that extreme in reality. So that's pretty good. And then let's lay the green back in there. Okay. In fact, I'm going to separate these 2. You know, I think I might have to restitch that design. And by the way, it's actually called Evening Star Quilted Cat. And currently it's a very inexpensive PDF in my Etsy store. So take a look if you're interested in stitching that one. And I would love to see whatever color scheme you come up with to stitch your own version. So let's see what's next. I've had questions from 2 groups of stitchers that I feel like I need to address. And let me start by saying I love all the comments that I get on my YouTube channel. And I appreciate it so much. And I don't ever want anybody to feel like they cannot comment frankly about how they view what it is that I'm doing here on FlossTube. So the 2 groups are left-handers and people who only stitch on Aida. And I have had questions and comments from both groups telling me they feel a little left out because I'm always stitching on linen and I'm only demonstrating with a right-handed technique. So I guess here's the thing. I am right-handed. I'm pretty ambidextrous. There's a lot of things I do like a left-hander would do. It's been pointed out to me I deal cards left-handed. I count money left-handed, which is something we don't do very often, but I was once a bank teller, and that's when it was pointed out to me that I don't count money like a right-handed person. So I bring all this up to say that my whole philosophy for this FlossTube channel is to talk about what I love about cross stitch and to share with you as much as I can my love and my of the craft and the expertise that I have developed over the years of stitching. That said, I feel a responsibility to communicate and to connect with both of those groups of people. So what I'm going to do going forward is to start making some short, what I call 1-minute tutorials that will show stitches both left-handed and on Aida. Because let's do the math here. If every time I showed you something, I showed you right-handed on linen, then left-handed on linen, then right-handed on Aida, then left-handed on Aida, it would just make this whole process much longer than it is and much more unwieldy. So I want you to know that I hear you and I want to respond to that need. I just don't feel like I can put it into this format. So just be patient with me. Once I finish the stitch along videos for Hearts Come Home at Christmas, then I'll have a little bit more time and I can start filling in the gaps. So look for that coming down the road. I've also had lots of questions about the 3 types of cross stitch I keep talking about: Danish, English, and Victorian. And one of the questions that has come to me is, which is my favorite? And I want to tell you, I use them all. And as I've been making the videos for Hearts Come Home at Christmas and really consciously watching how I stitch, I realize that I use all 3. And every once in a while, I make up my own way of doing it, which is what I encourage you to do. Pick the method or the technique that is comfortable for you, that comes naturally to you, and that fits in the project. But one of the interesting questions I've gotten about that is how the 3 compare in terms of floss usage. And I decided to do an experiment about that. So here's the result of my experiment. I started with 3 colors of thread, and I used flower thread just so I could only have to deal with a single strand. And I cut each one the same length, which was 12 inches, and I stitched 15 complete cross stitches. So the first row is Danish, so I did half cross over and half cross back. And the second one is English. So this was doing complete cross stitches, working left to right. And then Victorian, which is complete cross stitches, working from right to left. And in all cases, you can see I have a little knot here. I did not bury the threads, and so that we would be strictly looking at thread consumption in terms of stitching. So let's see what the results are. So of course, since the English method starts on this side and the Victorian starts on this side and the Danish also starts on this side, that's why the threads are in different positions. So using my ruler here, this is, let's start up here with the Danish. So I have a little more than 5 1/4 inches left. Okay, the pink color, which is the pink color, which is the English method, I have 5 1/2 inches left. And the Victorian method, the blue, I have 4 1/2 inches left. So I'm glad that that question was asked, because I've also been curious, and it kind of just made me pause and say, okay, let's just do it as scientifically as possible. So again, the results were that the Danish and the English consumed about the same amount of thread for the stitching part, and the Victorian used more. So that's kind of interesting. Another question that came up from a different Jean, who also spells her name with the extra N and E on the end of it. And she said, at some point, I hope you can talk about the 10th stitch. Some say you just do the bottom leg of a stitch. Would that not misshape the fabric? Okay, the 10th stitch is an umbrella term. That's what I call an umbrella term. So under the 10th stitch, you have 3 stitches. You have the half cross, which she refers to as being just the bottom leg of your cross stitch. You have the basket weave stitch, and you have the continental stitch. You hear this term more in people who do canvas work or needlepoint, or in the UK and on the continent they refer to as tapestry. Here in the US, we call it needlepoint. So you hear the term 10th stitch more among needlepointers than you do among cross stitchers. So when we do a half cross in cross stitch, yes, you are doing one of the 10 stitches. And if your tension is good, it should not distort your fabric. Now, if you were doing a complete piece in tent stitch, which to me then wouldn't be cross stitch because you're not doing cross stitches, you're only doing a half cross. But if you were to do that, then yes, it could distort your linen. It could even distort your Aida if the piece is large enough. So you would probably want to use some sort of a frame, which is what needle pointers or people who stitch tapestry designs would use. So again, that's almost too much information in terms of how we think of it in terms of cross stitch. But I did want to give as complete of an answer as I could, because it is a good question. That's just about a wrap. You know what? We have a holiday weekend coming up. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving here in the U.S. And so for many people, it's going to be a long weekend. I still plan on having a video for you next Saturday, even though it's a holiday. I want to share it with you. But I am really thinking that I might be starting another project that weekend, especially if I can get Hearts Come Home at Christmas all wrapped up. Here's another thing too that I wanted to tell you. A couple people have mentioned to me a really good idea I want to share, and that is to start, if you have not already started, to start Hearts Come Home at Christmas on Christmas Day. How fun would that be? So I just might have to adopt that tradition in my household and pick a new Christmas design to start on Christmas Day. Just to, we tend to stitch so far in advance of holidays to have it ready to put on display for the holiday, which of course makes a lot of sense. But there's something I think really charming about stitching a Christmas design during that wonderful holiday period. So I just might have to do that too. I love holiday stitching. I hope you do too. And so between now and next Saturday, I hope that you stitch happy and stay safe. I'll see you next week.